does live burn training actually prepare new firefighters for the real thing?
No.
I was curious to hear your answer on that.
We do the best we can. Unfortunately, it is very, very hard to recreate the conditions that you're going to deal with out in the field. So, as instructors, I think we have some of the best academies around, National and Suffolk here, even New York City, and we do our best, but there's only so much we can do. And NFPA 1403 is very clear in what the rules of engagement are when we're dealing with acquired structures and burnt buildings. It's very, very, very severe. And if you deviate from that and something happens, you're going to get called on the carpet. And it's unfortunate because we should be, I believe, operating buildings that are going to be very similar to what we're going to deal with.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? And I know we're not allowed to do it, but furnishings, right? We're searching rooms with nothing in them. That's not reality.
Yeah.
Right? It's not reality. It's not reality that there's no curtains on the windows or roll down shades that you're going to have to get through in order to get into that building. It's not, we don't have them. Right? So, when we go to these buildings, right, fires, start in a corner and they work their way up the wall and shoot across the room and roll over and everything. You can't create that in a burn building.
Yeah, it's really,
we have to burn in the center of the room or a specific spot so that we don't have spalling or we don't have, the building falling apart or doing damage to the structure. There's so many factors that go into it. Plus, what we're burning is hay and pallets. It's not a couch. It's not a bed. It's not, it's not a carpet, right? That the furnishings that we deal with in a regular fire produce overwhelming heat, smoke, rollover, flashover, everything else that you can think of, and we cannot create that in a burn building.
Right. Well,
we could, but they won't let us.
Well, except for things like the Flashover simulator. Stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
you can't do that in the actual burn building where you're doing an actual evolution. But that's why
it would be nice if we could do that down a hallway or something.
That's why county has that separate station there, which is like, hey, we're doing a burn building Flashover simulator. That was always when that class came up. It was always, if you have not been to the Flashover simulator, you got to go.
It is a great thing, but reality is you're not going to be sitting on a floor watching something flash over your head, right? And, we tell the students and we reiterate, you start seeing this rollover, you should be leaving. And, but how many of them are really taking that in and saying, I shouldn't be here right now?
Yeah, because like you just said, you're sitting there
watching and going, oh, this is really neat. I mean, it's great training. It's great to see what that is. But is it really comprehending in a young recruit's head that this is bad and I shouldn't be here?
Exactly.
Right? And that's part of the problem. Like even with these burn buildings, I think we get overwhelmed to the point where we say, oh, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. And they go, oh, I felt heat. I've been to a fire or two, blah, 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 blah. Until you really feel heat, you don't know what heat feels like. I'm telling you, I've been there. All right? I've been on fire. I know what it feels like. It's not a comfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Right? So, when people say, oh, I felt heat or I know what heat is, I'm like, you haven't felt shit.
Yeah, because you look at it like you mentioned, the furnishings in the houses, couches, furniture, curtains, all that stuff that burns so fucking hot that it is not going to compare to a pile of hay on top of some pallets.
I mean, we can get the buildings pretty hot, especially, on the second burn. It usually gets a little hotter, like the Flashover simulators. The second burn gets a little hotter. But, until you experience that in real life of what it is, when you're pushing down a hallway and the fire's blow torching down the hall at you because it's wind-driven or whatever the situation is or whatever's burning down there, it's a whole different battle.
Yeah, like where it makes you wince almost. You're like I feel that.
Yep.
Like that shit hurts,
And I'm not saying you should feel heat like that. Like
right.
Realistically, if you're starting to feel heat through your gear and stuff, you should be out of there.
Exactly.
Don't go any further. But it's just it takes a lot to be a firefighter and feel real heat and understand what it is. If it gets to that point, we've already gone too far. But sometimes when you have a hose line and you're working down a hallway, right, the water could be basically boiling in the hallway where you can't even crawl anymore because it's that hot, And I went to some pretty good fires in project buildings, and they're concrete buildings. Like, you have a severe fire in those buildings, you're gonna feel heat.
Yeah.
Like, it's radiating off the walls, it's coming down the hallway at you. It's a whole different feeling.
Yeah. So, I mean, to this question, I would say it's really kind of a double-edged sword, because you can't just do evolutions where it's just, all right, we're going to throw the hood over your mask and make you blacked out, and then you're going to walk and search and stretch hose that way, because they're not really getting that full experience. But at the same time, live burn training still isn't giving you that full experience, but it's giving you some taste
Listen,
of, okay,
it's giving you a feeling of what it's going to be like. I mean, but, like when you look at a burn building, right, and I think our instructors do a phenomenal job to get it to be as best they can. But reality is, right, when you're actually fighting a fire, a real fire, and you're out there, it takes a little bit with the hose line to get that fire to knock down, right? When you go in there, right, the pallets have been burning and the hay's all burnt out. By the time you get to it, sometimes it's already half burnt out. And now you hit it with the line, 1-2 sweep, and it's out.
Yeah.
Like, it's over, right? That's not going to happen in a real burn. You're in a home on fire or a commercial building. You could be in there whipping that thing around for a while and trying to fight your way to get to where the seat of the fire is. And even when you get to it, it could still be burning underneath and everything else, right? So once you go to some real fires and you start seeing what it's really like, you say, well, it's really not like the burn building. Now, sometimes that's the only training we can get. You do the best with it. I love going out to the burn buildings out there.
Yeah.
When my department goes, if I can go more than once, I go. We require all our members to go at least once a year.
Right.
To an actual burn, right? Not the other stuff. An actual burn in a building. But, if you can go more than once, you can go to twice or 3 times, you should do it.
Yeah.
Get the experience of getting off the rig in a position, taking your position, and going to where you need to be, right? That's the important part.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, with the going into a burn building where it's just the middle of the room with the hay and the pallets burning, you just go in there, you start sweeping, it's out. One of the things that I was taught when I first joined was you're sweeping the ceiling to cool off the gases, and then you're hitting the floor. The floor is to push anything that's big away from you, and also to make sure there is a floor.
It's that, and also because you don't know what's on the floor, right? And back in the day in the city, in the South Bronx, there were needles and stuff like that, and knives and shit. There was crap all over the floor. But you're also going to have hot water coming back at you, right?
Yeah.
It's steam. So, like, even with these hallways, you kind of want to whip it around, and every once in a while you want to make sure you sweep that floor in front of you to push all that hot water back away from you, or get some cool water down in there to hopefully cool it down. And, it's not always going to be that hot, and it's not always going to be that bad, but you want to make sure there's a floor below you. You want to hear it bouncing off the walls. You want to know what's there, because sometimes you can't see it. I mean, with thermal imaging cameras, it gives us a little more insight. We can see a little more. We can do a little more. But you still want to make sure you're moving that line all the way around. However you're going to do it, you want to bounce it off as much as possible so it's coming up from all directions and it's cooling that environment. But, there's been a couple fires where we were down on our knees moving in, and next thing you know, your knees are burning because of the hot water.
Yeah.
And now, next thing you know, I'm like squatting as we're moving forward
Yeah.
because I don't want to burn my knees up, So, you got to pay attention to what's going on around you. And when you're really fighting fire and you're feeling heat, sometimes you don't even realize it. You're getting burned.
Yeah,
You're getting burned right through you get it on your hands, you get it on your face, sometimes even your knees when you're crawling in there. You don't even really feel it until after. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, my knees hurt, and you're like, oh shit, they're blistered.
Yeah.
It happens.